Well, my name is Ann Bell. I'm known in Tulsa as Ann Bell. I was born in 1950 here in Tulsa, was born and raised here, went to school, all my school years in Tulsa. I'm a proud Okie, and I got into show business and into the music industry when I was 16. So that's how my music career began in Tulsa. But the highlight of my life at that point was at 17, I got married to Larry Bell, and he took me to Los Angeles to meet his best friend, whose name was Claude Russell Bridges, AKA Leon Russell. He had a house on Sky Hill in Los Angeles. We go there, and I met Leon for the first time, and I was just floored. First of all, he's such a charismatic person. Leon is a very spiritual person, and he right away made me feel loved, but made me feel very confident about my gifting, because he began to mentor me, and he began to speak into my life about my singing and how I approached entertaining and how I conducted myself on stage, and just to be comfortable, to be me. He ended up moving back to Tulsa a couple of years after that. And when he first moved back, and Leon comes to town, and he had purchased the house on Teresa, and he was having a lot of work done to it. And Leon says, I have no place to stay. I'm gonna stay with you and Larry. And I was like, great, so he moves in with Larry and I, and we had a little house on 28th and Harvard. And I would wake up in the mornings, and there would be 10, 12 teenage girls camped out in my front yard waiting to see Leon. And so I started getting the understanding of what it meant to become a rock star and that lifestyle that followed, when you become famous. And so I would get tickled, and I'd go out and I'd feed the girls and bring them stuff to drink. And I go, he's not awake yet, but he'll be out soon. But, it was a great time for me being under Leon's tutelage. He was like a father to me in a way, even though he was only 6, 7 years older. He was like a father figure to me. He protected me. He made sure I didn't get bad contracts. He watched over me. And then I go into labor to have my twins, and he actually goes to the hospital at St. Francis with me to have my babies, and caused quite a stir in the hospital when all the little nurses saw Leon Russell walk in. And that was kind of fun, but he couldn't go anywhere in Tulsa without being recognized. Those early years, 72, 73, in the church studio, those were what I call the prime years of Tulsa music, for the Tulsa sound. Because, of course, Leon's the father. He's the father of it all. But other musicians from Tulsa had gone on. Jame, Oldaker, and Dick Sims had joined up with Eric, and were starting to make a name for themselves. And, Gary Busey had come on board as Teddy Jack. Of course, he'd had this little television show with Gailard Sartain called the Mazeppa Papazoid Magic Hour or something like that, some crazy thing where they just did improv comedy. But Gary was with us. He played drums sometimes and percussion sometimes, and would tour with us. So everything was very fresh and new and unique and unorthodox. But the studio was wonderful because it being a church, there was a spirit in it. It was tangible. And we played different. We approached the music with a different just passion, I believe. I remember the first time I went in there, I was like, wow, this is gonna sound great in here, because those old church buildings, the ambiance, you have to do some toning down with but it was just a cool space. Leon, a lot of times, would like to approach it where we would just play live. And it was wonderful because the music had a certain just attitude to it. So when we did it live, it was just a spontaneous response to the music and the song itself, and to him, because he would always set his piano where we would be around him, and you would feed off of Leon. You would always feed off of Leon. He was the band director. He was our inspiration. He was the songwriter. He's a genius. Leon was a genius. In the 60s and 70s, it was truly about the music, the songwriting, the musicianship itself. And I'm hoping that the Tulsa players that are coming up now go into this church If they just go in and sit and absorb what he left, that's still there. What we left in those walls, it'll be like a tutor to them. They'll learn, they'll glean. Hopefully they'll embrace the approach that the original Tulsa sound had a certain approach to blues. And it was known globally in the music industry. They called it the Tulsa sound for a reason. We didn't play blues like Texas did. We didn't play blues like Chicago and Detroit did. Tulsa had its own approach, and it hinged on Leon Russell's piano and Chuck Blackwell's drums. He had a certain groove that he would hit, and it created its own sound, its own atmosphere in the way we played blues and R&B. And so that's why people like Eric Clapton would fly from England to Tulsa to find his players, because we played blues unlike anybody else did. It even affects how you live. It affects how you live, because a lot of the music came from life experiences, you know. I'm tore down, almost level with the ground. You know, that stuff came out of heartbreak. Somebody you loved left you. You know, Leon's music came from his church background. He had a lot of gospel in the blues, which is what set us apart. It was a very gospel-based feel to the blues. It's an interesting thing when you come from Oklahoma, it's home. And Leon was aware, as we all were, of just the talent and the gifts in Tulsa. And I think that he wanted to come back to make sure that the Tulsa music history thrived. I think he wanted to make an investment in the Tulsa music history. I think he wanted to leave a legacy in Oklahoma of his music, in his life, in his upbringing. And so he came back. And it's funny because he was living with Larry and I when the call came in from George Harrison for him to do Bangladesh. It's funny, I remember I was out in LA with Leon when Elton John came to America for his first tour. And the first gig that he did was at the Troubadour. And nobody had ever heard of Elton before. And so he comes and he plays, and Leon went and heard him. And I remember he came back to the house the next day and he says to me, "Have you heard this British guy named Elton?" I said, "I've been hearing about him." And he goes, "Well, I can tell you what." He goes, I'm gonna have to keep my thing going because this kid is bad. You know, he goes, he can play. And yet, in truth, Leon was Elton's idol. I wasn't surprised when he said to us, "I've purchased a church." To some people, you might have gone like, as a long hair hippie rock and roll star, you might go like, what? You know, but that made sense to me because I knew his church background. I knew his mama. I knew how he was raised. And so I went, wow. My first response was, oh, I can't wait to hear what it sounds like in there. It's an old historic, that thing's, I don't even know the year it was built, but the stone, created a certain just atmosphere inside. And knowing that a lot of prayers had gone up in there, when you're a person that does believe in things like God, that matters. And the way he would set it up and the way the instrument sounded was just very cool and very different. So it was a fun atmosphere. It was a fun place to record and video. He started doing some video down there as we were rehearsing. He brought the Gap Band in. So there's a great video you can find on YouTube of we were rehearsing a song, and he did a Marvin Gaye song, "Ain't That Peculiar." Now, a lot of people would have thought Leon Russell's doing a Marvin Gaye song, but yeah, there's some gospel R&B feel to that song. So he's doing it, and the Gap Band are playing, and we're all down there live, and they videotaped it, and it was incredible. It sounded great. It looked great. You could do the lighting down in the studio great. It was wonderful. And of course, we were all young, so we looked good, and and I watched that YouTube video now, I just smile and go like, oh my gosh, that was the best time of my whole life. I just know that Leon was very loyal And it mattered to him that the music from Tulsa that was birthed out of here, that he sired as our father, didn't become politicized or perverted in any way, because it was pure. And the way that he loved us, he wasn't a real kissy, touchy guy. He wasn't an egotistical, self-absorbed person. But you knew that he loved you. And it would encourage us, and he supported us. And that is something I think that will stand millenniums in this town. I think it's important that the history of it be maintained and protected, so that people can go and see photographs, and videos, and listen to the music and get a sense of who he was, because now he's gone. I was telling my husband not long ago, one of the things that hurts me the most is that I'll never get to experience him live again. I would go with him sometimes up to Grand Lake when he had the studio at Grand Lake. And he had a little house that he rented up there. It wasn't a mansion, simple little cabin-like house. And we'd go over to the studio and we'd do some tracks. Then we'd go over to the house and we'd eat and we'd go to bed. And I remember one night, I'd gone to bed about midnight, and around about 3 in the morning, I hear him playing. Nobody else in the house is awake but Leon. And I got up, I put my robe on, and I go in, and he's sitting at the piano in the house that he'd rented, and he was playing a classical piece. A lot of his fan base didn't know Leon was classically trained and could play a 30, 45-minute Chopin piece from memory, flawless. And he was playing this piece, and I just sat on the piano bench next to him, didn't say a word, and I just listened and watched him play. It was just magic. I'll never forget that. There'll never be another Leon Russell. There will never be another.